Welcome to the Global Gaming Business Podcast, the industry's first and longest running podcast, now in our 19th year. I'm Roger Gros, the publisher of GGB, and this week we sit down with Cory Morowitz, a managing partner with GGHM, a global gaming and hospitality advisory company. For over 40 years, Cory Morowitz has advised gaming, hospitality, and other business clients on operations improvement, market entry and expansion, strategy, and finance. A recognized expert in a wide range of business, finance, operations, and management areas, he has authored numerous articles, studies, and white papers, and has taught multiple continuing education and master's level collegiate courses focused on the gaming and hospitality industry. He spoke with me in the garden of his home in Linwood, New Jersey, on the current trends in the gaming industry. Cory, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
You know, we've known each other for a while, and you were always somebody I respected, his views of the industry. And so why don't you give us a bit about your background and how you came together with GGHM and your
Sure.
partners' backgrounds as well.
Sure. It's a very long, windy path. I started out in the accounting industry.
Mm-hmm.
For many years, I owned an accounting firm. Around 1996, I went back to school, got my MBA, and when I was done, one of my clients actually hired me to be their CFO.
Okay.
And did that for a couple of years, and then started my gaming consulting practice.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, through meeting lots of different smart people, I ended up meeting Michael Kim, who gave me the opportunity to sell my accounting practice and merge my gaming consultancy with his company, Global Gaming and Hospitality. And the two of us together, along with another partner, John Rinkowitz, formed GGH Morowitz, and then brought on a fourth partner a couple of years ago, named Rich Baldwin, who I had known for 20 some odd years and had done some work for before he got into our side of the business. And so it's all evolved into what today we call GGHM.
Okay. So what kind of work do you do? Obviously consulting, but what's your expertise?
So collectively, we're a consulting and advisory firm that's focused pretty much 100% on the worldwide gaming industry, which could be bricks and mortar, online, sports, anything that, distributed gaming, anything that touches the gaming industry. We work with suppliers, operators, vendors, tech side of the business.
So all the members of your organization, and they all have the special sets of expertise, so you can do anything basically, right?
Yeah. So we split ourselves up into three areas. I myself and my partner John Rinkowitz run the analytics and industry expertise part of the business. We have a capital markets part of the business, so we call it strategic advisory, and Michael Kim and Rich Baldwin run that side of the business. And their backgrounds, as you heard my background, John and I both came up through accounting. Rich was actually bridges both worlds. He was the CFO of a public gaming company. He was came up through a Big Four accounting firm, so he was on the finance side, and then he was in banking for the last 8 years before he joined us. So, and then Michael has been on the banking side of the business. Then the third side of our business we call asset management, and everything from where we've invested our own money and operated a casino to owned and operated along with private equity a casino to helping tribes oversee and manage their own gaming operations.
And do you have people coming to you who want to get into the industry?
That happens sometimes. Yeah, we're actually talking to some folks right now who would like to be owners of casinos. It holds an allure.
So there's a lot of big casino companies that are shedding their properties that they don't consider their core assets, and these are small small casinos, usually regional casinos. There's also talk of a big merger in the industry, which will this merged company will have multiple properties in one jurisdiction. They'll have to get rid of them. So Is there an opportunity here for smaller companies to pick up those casinos that are up for sale?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime an asset comes on the market, there are, and if it's a viable asset, and if it's, not in the strategic portfolio of a larger company, or, regulatory issues pop up, yeah, there's capital out there for well thought out acquisitions like that, for sure.
So if somebody would come to you like that, you would help them draw up a business plan then for taking over a casino like that?
Sure. So, yeah, we've been on that side of the business. We've represented a private equity firm that owned some debt in a casino, and there was an opportunity to take over the casino. We worked alongside and put up some of our own capital to make that happen. We had a partner who worked 24/7 in the business and operated the business, helped turn it around. So we'll do everything from helping to craft the strategy for the acquisition, pricing the acquisition, to due diligence on the asset. Looking for all the hidden issues that are bound to crop up.
Sure, right.
And then we'll if the client wants us to be involved on an asset management role, we'll do that as well.
Okay. Can you talk about any of the casinos or companies you've been involved with?
I just want to make sure I don't breach any confidentiality.
Of course, right.
I mean, over the years, we've represented, I'm going to say today, we'll probably do 50% of our business in the tribal side.
Okay.
So, over the years, we've worked with Mohegan Sun in different capacities, Seminole Hard Rock, the Pokagon tribe, Potawatomis, Cherokee Nation Enterprises, in a lot of different capacities, doing studies, helping with acquisition.
So, in a lot of cases where they're getting rid of these smaller casinos, it becomes a standalone casino. It's not part of a big corporation. Can that kind of casino survive these days without an asset, a connection to a corporate casino company that has many assets?
Well, it always depends, right?
Right.
There's a reason why companies shed certain assets.
Right. Yeah.
And it depends. I mean, but from our own experience, if you have if you do the blocking and tackling right, you get that right. I mean, there's always a challenge if you don't have a strong loyalty program, and that put some limits on it. But if you get the blocking and tackling right, you get the marketing, the loyalty program under control. You manage your staffing and labor to your capacity. Create ways to differentiate yourself in the market. That's the real key.
Sure, right.
So any strong management with a good vision and some capital behind them can do wonders with a single property.
Right. So what do you think is the one most important thing to do for a new casino operator when they take over an existing casino?
Again, I'll speak from experience. I think number one is get the accounting right. That's like, we've had experience where sometimes that's just not, you need a good staff that's going to give you good data.
Right.
You got to make sure that you're working from a good set of data. So get the data right, get the analytics correct. I think the first thing you really have to do is understand your position in the marketplace, what your capital capabilities are, and then carve out a position, especially for a smaller non-affiliated casino.
Sure.
You really have to differentiate, and you have to carve that position that allows you to not necessarily go head to head with the other guys in the market. So it depends on the assets that you're taking over. It's market specific. I like to compare it to, I wrote an article years ago about you got to make your clients cry, right? You want them to be emotional. You want them to have an emotional connection to your business, right? Whatever business it is. And I think that's the key is if you were taking over a casino, how are you going to set yourself up to do that? Get the data right, have the right staff in place, get the talent right, make sure you've got, enough capital to position yourself well. Those are the things you have to do.
Great. So let's talk in general about the bricks and mortars casinos. ever since the pandemic, there's been a great increase in revenue every year. It's still going on. I was talking to Bill Miller of the AGA the other day, and he was saying you're very cautiously optimistic, but the facts of the matter is, in some markets, particularly here in the Atlantic City region, the revenues in the land-based casinos are flat or even declining a little bit. There are signs that this is going to continue to happen. Should this be a cause of concern for the land-based casino operators?
Certainly. So there's, we track this data. I think 38 markets we track, 22 are down, 16 are up.
Okay.
Markets that are up are, new markets like New Hampshire, Kentucky.
Right.
Markets where there's, new assets that are entering the market.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other markets are under pressure, under fire.
Right.
So they should be concerned, and they need to, I don't think the bottom is falling out. We've had like 3 really good years.
Right, sure.
Right. And even if revenues are down 1 or 2%,
mm-hmm.
if that's the case, it's not a great thing. But, when you compare that to 2019, we're still in good shape. So it's, at this point, you need to be right sizing,
mm-hmm.
for the future. You need to make sure you get, we've had a big spike in labor costs over the last several years.
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you have the right processes in place. You got the right technology in place to
mm-hmm.
manage through revenue downturns.
Sure, right.
But you got to reset your expectations.
Mm-hmm. So there's been a renewed discussion recently about does online gambling impact the land-based casinos? And there's some indication when I was talking to Rob Norton last spring from the Cordish Live casinos, they actually turned against online gaming in Maryland because they saw that it impacted their sports betting operations in Pennsylvania when they went online, not just retail. So where do you think that's headed? Do you think that's a legitimate concern for the industry?
It's a fascinating study, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we look at all this data. I mean, the first thing I looked at when trying to study this is what's happened in the retail sector,
mm-hmm.
right? And so if you look at retail revenues as an industry, brick and mortar have continued to grow,
mm-hmm.
and yet online has grown from nothing to somewhere around 16% of total retail revenues across the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at the gaming industry, and the gaming industry, is flattened this year, but it's continued to grow since the advent of gaming. You look at individual markets, and it's mixed data, right?
Sure.
I was looking at New Jersey today. Gaming revenue has grown from 2000, I looked from 17 to 23. Brick and mortar revenue grew by 2.7%. Online revenue grew, I forget the percentages, but online went from 10% of gaming, and then it was growing to about 14 or 15 before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Now online's 40% of gaming.
Yeah,
right? That's like more than 2 times what retail is.
Right.
And then so to me, gaming revenue kept growing. Online's 40%. In Pennsylvania, it's about 34% today. Gaming revenue has been flat in PA.
Right.
But it's almost like a category unto itself, right? Yeah. So sure, can you introduce all these new channels and forms of gaming
mm-hmm.
to consumers, and will it ultimately affect, brick and mortar?
Right.
At some point it has to, right?
Sure.
But it's also, in my mind, created tremendous opportunities for gaming operators, especially if they have omni-channel distribution, right? If they're on the online side and then they're also on the
mm-hmm.
brick and mortar side, that's a good combo.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute opportunity. I just wanted to mention, we also looked at the movie industry. Right?
Okay.
I'm trying to think like what's a parallel for gaming and what could happen,
mm-hmm.
right? So retail, I said, well, retail, you still got to go try your shoes on, right? So, but in a movie theater, right, you go for the experience, and then so now you have all these streaming services, you have all these other channels of distribution. I watch stuff on my phone. I load it up on my phone. I go on a flight.
Right.
I watched 6 episodes of Better Call Saul, right?
Right.
So you've got that you're competing with. The movie industry has not come back.
Mm-hmm.
The movie industry was flattening out.
Right.
It was interesting. the number of tickets sold in the movie industry was going down up until 19, but revenues were growing because their pricing was going up. Now after COVID, the movie industry has not recovered.
Right.
It hasn't gotten to the 19 levels, but the gaming industry did.
Yeah.
And now you only have 6 states where you really have some comps.
Right. Yeah.
On online.
Sure.
You do have a lot of sports betting.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's also another category unto itself. So I would say that it's certainly a challenge, and if you're in the brick and mortar business, you should find a way to be in the online business as well, in some way, in some way to participate there.
I've noticed, for years I always thought, online gaming is going to be great. You can, give your players a free night at your hotel and have that crossover. But I haven't really seen a lot of casinos doing that effectively. Is there a reason that hasn't happened? Because they just solely focused on online gaming and the revenue that comes out of there?
I don't have a lot of data points on that. I've talked to some guys who say they see, some defection.
Right.
I've talked to plenty of others that say, well, we see a whole bunch of reactivated players, and we see a lot of players who never came to us. So that's. But when you look at the growth of a market like New Jersey, where online is now $1.9 billion, and brick and mortar is 2.8 or 2.9.
Right.
There has to be some cross-pollination going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just when you look at the total gaming revenue as a percentage of the income of the state. Sure. Now there is a lot of out-of-state revenue that comes into Atlantic City for the brick and mortar side.
Sure.
But there almost has to be. So again, I don't have any specific data points on who's got what programs, but I would think that would be, if you think of who's been winning in the retail side, it's like, who is able to mine the online space and send those people into the stores where they may do some incremental purchases when they go in there, right? So it's a natural strategy.
Okay, sure. So online gaming is still kind of in its infancy, obviously. We only have 6 or 7 states in the U.S. that have full online gaming and sports betting. But so you've got the online sports books, you got online casinos, you've got the social casinos, another huge industry that people underestimate. And now you have things like sweepstakes coming in that are, we don't know whether they're legal yet, but we'll see. So how do you think this is going to evolve?
Yeah. Well, I think first what's special about gaming is you have a very robust regulatory structure around it. It's fragmented because it's state by state, but it's still very, very strong regulatory structures. And what you're starting to see is a pushback on some of those previous sweepstakes, things like that, right? So that's the first part, I think, is, because this is so new, the regulators are getting their hands around it. You're starting to see them push back on some stuff. That'll come into focus. I think the other thing that you'll see is in other online spaces, electronic spaces, it takes a while for the industries to shake out, but you're starting to see it in those, in the online and sports betting spaces. You've got a couple of clear leaders that are emerging. We're starting to see a lot of smaller companies exit the space. And so that, even though it's fragmented because it's state by state, you're starting to see some consolidation, start to take place. So I think over time that will happen, in the gaming industry in the online space.
Do you see any parallel between what's happening with the bricks and mortar casinos and horse racing, for example? I mean, horse racing, used to be one of the most popular sports in the country, and now there's 3 or 4 tracks that can make money. Other ones are struggling. You think that's going to happen with casinos eventually?
That's a really great question. I think horse racing was probably in decline before gaming really took off.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of the fundamentals of that industry were a little bit different. They were being, in some ways, impacted by television. Hopefully this doesn't screw us up, but they were being impacted by other forms of entertainment.
Right.
And of course, there's lots of other forms of entertainment. I think the gaming industry has shown it's pretty resilient, and people people like to gamble,
Right.
and they like to go places,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they want to. They don't want to just be. They don't always want that to be a solitary experience.
Right.
So, I think the horse racing industry a little different. You know, you had 8 decision points over.
Right.
Oh, you know, what was it? 8 races, 9 races.
Right.
I think my parents took me to Aqueduct when I was like
Right.
9 years old, and I put $2 on
Right.
a bet that won me about 37 cents.
Yeah.
So, 'cause that was my
Yeah.
that was my conservative nature coming out at
Exactly right.
9 years old. But you know, so you didn't have the same level of engagement that you have in the casino environment. I don't think that the casino industry will have that same fate. I might look at like the mall industry and say like, what's
Yeah.
happened with the shopping mall,
Yeah.
right? You know, you need to reinvent these spaces.
Yeah.
They're
And
big,
it's the casino experience is more experiential. You know?
Yes.
It's not just sitting down at a slot machine and playing. You get the whole food and beverage, and if you're staying in a hotel,
Absolutely.
that should be part of it. And then
Yeah.
you think operators should really focus on that?
That's when you talk about how revenues are declining
Right.
or flat. You look at all of these challenges that are popping up. It absolutely comes back to what I said before: is you need to create an emotional connection with your customers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about a couple of businesses that have that emotional connection, Wawa,
Right.
Buc-ee's,
Yeah.
right? They opened the Buc-ee's in Colorado,
Yeah.
and it stopped traffic on the interstate because so many people wanted to go there.
Right.
People have these emotional connections with these places because they deliver great experience, physical experiences, and that's what the casinos have to do, in my opinion.
Right.
And there are ways to do that.
Yeah.
To connect with your customer that way.
Yeah.
Whether it's through your your hosts, your employees, your
Sure.
employee engagement, your physical spaces, the kind of restaurants you have. There are plenty of casinos that have won that.
Sure.
Well,
Well, this leads right into my next question, which is, when I first started in the business, people would come to the casino and leave, and you'd only have a chance to talk to them when they're in the casino. But now, you can quote unquote touch your player 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
How should they handle that kind of access?
There's certainly an opportunity to leverage that access, right?
Yeah.
We asked before about whether they're able to take an online player and get them to visit a casino,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. I mean, I think that's, you have to be careful, right? There's got to be balance,
Right.
in anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to
overdo it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to hear from my cable company except for ever,
Right.
right?
Yeah, right.
If they're gonna give me some new great services,
Sure.
right? So I think you have to there has to be a balance. You can't be in their face all the time, but the opportunity to create, with all of the convergence of all these other forms of entertainment, online gaming, sports betting, everything, there are real opportunities to create. Everybody's chasing this omni-channel distribution, right? So there really are opportunities to create that, consolidate it under one roof, right? And everything to non-gaming, right? Some of the big some of the big gaming companies out there have non-gaming hotels, opening in non-gaming jurisdictions. So there's lots of opportunity to consolidate that, and create that connection.
Sure, absolutely. So we're heading into Responsible Gaming Education Month in September, set up by the AGA, a great program. Overall, though, how do you think the industry is dealing with the responsible gaming?
Well, my experience is I sit on a couple of audit committees and compliance committees. I think that they're taking it very seriously.
Right. Yeah.
I really see that. Some of it's a culture shift. Some of it's because it's big companies, and they've got important licenses, and they get it, right? And and so I think that the industry is really, not just responsible gaming, AML, know your customer. They really have embraced and done a great job, from what I've seen personally and upfront, done a great job of taking that seriously and putting programs, processes, procedures in to make sure they're doing it right.
Sure. Yeah. So do you think they're doing it right on the online side? I mean, it's so transparent on the online side. You can see every bet they make and that kind of thing. Is that an important aspect for them?
I think it's absolutely important. It's you don't know what you don't necessarily have visibility into what a customer's doing in other online areas, right?
Sure.
But I know in the areas of know your customer and AML and just looking at patterns of play and stuff. I know that I've seen processes in place to flag that kind of stuff. Right. So and I think some of it is like, if it's an operator that has brick and mortar experience, I think they're more attuned to it.
Sure.
And I think but I think it will make its way through the industry.
Yeah. One more question. You have any advice for the industry for the upcoming years? I mean, especially when you consider, a possible economic downturn and that kind of thing?
Well, so we've been waiting for a recession for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Now, right? We haven't had one, and we had a short one during COVID, right, which was an exogenous event. And so downturns happen.
Yeah.
They've happened many times. I've looked at them over since 1980 when gaming started to grow.
Right.
And you have winners and losers during recessions. So there are going to be impacts. They're generally pretty short.
Yeah.
And 8 months to 18 months, you'll see an impact.
Yeah.
But we've looked at data, and there are casinos that increased revenue during recessions, and there are casinos that saw decreases. Right. There's always a lot of noise in the data. So I think recessions are an opportunity to get your house in order. Like the pandemic was a great opportunity to find out what was not important, right? And a lot of casinos kind of retooled themselves and did a great job of coming out of the gate with much better cost structures. Right. So, if there is a recession, we'll get through that, and it's an opportunity, I would say. And those things are generally short-lived. Yeah. Right. So don't let that stop, CapEx. I think CapEx, we look at gaming revenues over time, over a lot of casinos, whoever reports. And, once a casino opens and gets stable and stops investing, it's real hard to grow revenues, right? So I would say, if I had any advice, it's like make innovation part of your DNA. Yeah. Right? Sure. Don't let your operations, don't let your CapEx, flag, right? I mean, you need to keep spending money on these places to keep them relevant. And I'll go back to what I keep saying is create an emotional connection with your customers, because it's a lot harder. Right. It's harder in my business. It's harder for everybody to maintain, a strong, sustainable business. And the only way to do that is to create a perception and a connection to your customers that makes them want to keep engaging with you. And that's through a combination of, great staff, great, processes, nice properties, and understanding who your customers are.
Great. Well, that's great advice. So where can people get in touch with GGHM? Your website, email address, something like that?
I think the website is GGHMorowitz.com. Okay. Pretty sure. And I'm Cory at MorowitzGaming.com. That was the old name. Sure. I just haven't changed my email. That's great. But and we're going to be at G2E. We'll be our partners. We've made a commitment to being in a lot of places. Right. So you can see us at G2E, at the tribal gaming conferences, at IAGA. Great. So we'll be at all those places.
We'll check in at G2E for sure, and I'm sure you'll be at ICE in Barcelona next January too.
I love Barcelona, so I hope so.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Cory. I appreciate the time you spent with us today, and good luck on the future of the company.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Thanks. Great. Thanks, Roger.
Don't miss an episode of the GGB podcast by subscribing on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify today. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.